Sit back, relax, stay sinful. So in my life, there have only been a few times I've ever looked back and thought I could have been killed. This is one of them. It was back in 2010 and I just started college. I had arrived pretty early as I figured traffic would be much worse than it turned out to be. I decided to kill some time at the local Walmart across the street. After shopping and buying some food, I made my way out, and once I stepped off the curb, a man stopped me. This guy was probably between his late 30s and early 40s, and pretty unkempt looking. Ripped jeans that looked old, a shirt that was faded, and looked like it once had a design or writing on it. He also wore a baseball cap that appeared to be the only somewhat new thing he had on. Once he stopped me, he started up with, "Hey man, I hate to bother you, but I was doing some construction work up the road. My truck ran out of gas. Can you help me out and drive me to the gas station? I'm alone and pretty desperate." Obviously this seemed very sketchy, so I instead offered to give him $10. I figured maybe this guy really is down on his luck and needed help. To my surprise, he immediately shot down my offer, and instead continued to insist I instead let him drive me to the gas station in his truck, pay for his gas, and then he'd drive me back. Needless to say, this all seemed incredibly bizarre, and I told him no and that I was in a hurry. Instead of leaving it alone, he began to tell me, "Man, come on. I'm all alone here and my truck is on E. I'm stranded here by myself." When I continued to walk away, he began to try to grab at my arm while continuing to beg. I realized quickly that the way we were positioned, every time he went to grab at me and I walked away, he was leading me more and more away from the store and more toward the parking lot, which was not very full this early in the morning. Not wanting to let him keep leading me away, I walked back towards the store and said I had something I'd forgotten inside. Instead of following me, he quickly backed off once I made it to the doors. I think he didn't want to go inside and risk others seeing. This may sound like overreacting, but at this point I was freaking out. I had never had someone actually try and grab me like that, and every bad scenario was running through my head. Not wanting him to do this with anyone else, I alerted the front desk of what was going on, and they said they could handle it. Honestly, I don't know if they did or didn't, because I quickly went for the other exit and nearly ran to my car. Once I was in my car, I noticed he was walking away from his spot, and I assumed either they had kicked him out or he was simply admitting defeat for the day. I was curious, so I watched him walk back to the parking lot and get into his truck. My heart sank when he pulled away, and I noticed two heads pop up from the back seats, as if they were hiding out in view until the car was moving. To make matters even more sketchy, he did not pull into the nearest gas station, and instead pulled onto the highway. Obviously not something someone alone and running out of gas would do. Fast forward 2 days later, and I stop at the same Walmart, and what do I find? Yup, it was him. Still there and still giving the same story about being stranded and needing someone to come with him. This time, instead of telling the store, I just immediately called the police. I don't know if he recognized me and saw me on the phone, but he left very soon after, and I never saw him in the parking lot again. Story number 2. This happened over 20 years ago, when I was 8 or 9 years old. My mom took me along to the mall with her for the day. I got very bored and she was going to shop in Christopher and Banks, which was across the way from KB Toy. I was old enough to go into the toy store on my own, while my mom shopped close by. I was in the doll section looking at the baby dolls when I kneeled down. There was a man close by also looking at the baby dolls. The next thing I know, he was right behind me, and he literally rubs his body against my head. I was a little weirded out, but I just thought it was an accident, so I did not get up. He continues to look intensely at the dolls and comes back and thrusts his pelvis into my head. At that point, I knew he was an absolute weirdo, and I had to get out of there. I got up and sprinted across the hall to find my mom. The craziest thing is I was too embarrassed to tell her. We kept shopping that day and I was terrified to see him again. As we were getting pretzels, there he was going up the escalator. He saw me and smiled. I felt sick to my stomach and knew that man was an absolute monster. Story number 3. This happened when I was 12. My family lived in an apartment, and I usually got home from school around 2 p.m. My parents got home around 5, so I was alone for a while. Usually I would just go to my room and take a nap or watch videos on my iPod. We lived on the second floor in a very small complex. One day I came home and I was laying in my bed when I heard a knocking sound. It was very hard and slow, so immediately I was scared and I called my parents. I hid in the closet for a while because the knocking went on for 30 minutes. When my parents got home, they noticed there were footprints on the door, so someone had actually been kicking it. This happened a few times over the span of weeks, that when I get home, I'd have to put a chair on the door so if someone tried to get in, it wouldn't open. It was very scary. I was 12 and not sure what to do. My parents always told me never to open the door to strangers, so I never did. One day, my family and I go out to the store to do some shopping. I remember it was around Easter. We'd bought the little painting kits for eggs, so I was very excited. We come home, and as we approach the door, we notice the door looks open. We try to open it, but it's still locked, and it had just been kicked in so hard. Our front door neighbors come out and say she called the police because our downstairs neighbor was kicking our door violently. The police get there and question us, and we let them know we haven't been home all day. They question the man downstairs, and he tells them that we were being excessively loud and he was hearing things. Obviously, we hadn't been home, so there's no one making noise. We see the police take him away, apparently to get a mental evaluation. The man was very calm and smiling while the police took him away. A week later, he returns home. This is when we decided that we should move. We weren't sure what his goal had been all the times that he tried to kick in our door. I was so scared about what he could have done to me if he had gained entrance into our home. He had been excessively violent and he'd kicked the door in for an hour and a half. I never called the cops and I was only 12, so I didn't really know how to handle the situation. The police told me that if it happened again to call them immediately. We moved soon after and that was the end of it. I still get so much anxiety when someone knocks on the door. I grew up in those apartments and always felt safe. It was a true shame that we had to move away like that. I didn't really understand the scale of the situation. The man was obviously trying to get in or violently kick down the door. The police think he was hearing things, and I don't blame him if he needed help with his mental health, but there was no reason to be as violent as he was. Story number 4. This happened to me around 10 years ago, when I was 18 or 19. At the time I was in a new relationship, still in the early stages when everything was brand new and an adventure. My girlfriend came from a well-off family and had very strict parents who weren't fond of her being out so much, nor our social groups, so it was often difficult to meet. To this end, we would regularly sneak out of our houses and meet up around 1 a.m., stay out together most of the night. The road she lived on was an upper middle-class area, connected to a Lark Park Forest River walk, that by day was a very popular destination for joggers, as well as kayakers. By night, this was a hot spot for drug deals, dodgy folk, and doggers. Not the safest place to go at night, but a regular haunt nonetheless. Anyway, this night I head over to her house and wait outside. I should mention that I look very out of place with scruffy hair and a long coat. She is delayed getting out for some reasons that now escape me, so I decided to chill out for a while outside and wait. Location-wise, I'm at the side of a road with two large fields on either side, both of which have a large tree and hedge line between them and the road. After 20 to 30 minutes, I hear a car driving up the road towards me, and I get this horrible gut-wrenching feeling telling me to get off the road. I felt like Frodo sensing the impending arrival of Nazgul. I quickly climb over the hedge and drop down prone on the other side and stay as still as possible. The car slows down as it approaches where I've been standing and waiting. I'm fairly certain the driver must have seen me. The car stays there and no one leaves. The engine idles and just stays at the spot on the road waiting. I assume to spot me again. I'm terrified. I have no idea who they would be, but I can't shake the horrible feeling in my gut at all. I hide for what felt like hours, but in reality would have been no more than 30 minutes. The car eventually drives on, heading towards a car park for the forest and the dead end. I still can't shake the fear and don't want to risk getting caught, but also didn't feel safe. So I move to the opposite side of the road and hide behind the other hedge. Soon enough, I heard the familiar sound of an engine as the car comes back down again and stops nearby where I'm waiting. They hang around for another 20 minutes or so before driving away again, this time for good. I can't remember how long it took me to get the courage to leave. In hindsight, the rational part of my brain likes to just think that someone had just phoned the police on the scruffy guy loitering around midnight, but I'm really not sure. Their behavior felt very off, and that feeling in my gut was like nothing I've felt since. At the time, I couldn't shake the fear of this unknown person just sitting in a car waiting for me to try and move, much like a hunter waiting patiently for prey. Thank you guys for watching and listening. Please be sure to leave a like, comment, share, and subscribe for future content. Be sure to keep sending in your Halloween stories for this year's Halloween video. I have 2 or 3 stories already and I need at least 10 to 15 more. Email them to thesinfulsavant@gmail.com. The link will be in the description box below as well. And until we meet again, stay sinful.